An interesting support question came up recently where someone wanted to use a continuum to try and simulate one of the old style split black key organ instruments, of which there's now a modern electronic version available. This is for people who want to play a lot of different microtunings, perhaps, or maybe they want to try and simulate playing a mean tone tuned organ of the period, something like that. We won't go into any of the theory here, but in the old days, in the Renaissance and Early Baroque, some of the organs had split black keys because the tuning systems there had differences between what an E flat and a D sharp might be, for example. And so some of the organs particularly, and some harpsichord, had this kind of split black key configuration. Now recently, there's a really innovative keyboard that was invented called the Renaissance 17. You can go to this website and look that up. It's a really interesting keyboard. You can see what it does is it splits each black key into two frequency possibilities, and then because this is an electronic instrument, you can tune it any way you like to support the key configurations. So someone asked the support question, can you simulate this on a continuum? Obviously, in Osmos, you can't. It's got fixed keys, but a continuum has a flexible playing surface that can be rescaled and reprogrammed in a few different ways. Let's take a look at what some of the possibilities are for doing things similar to this, but maybe not exactly like it. Well, one of the things we can do is we can always split Y so that you can have some set of notes playing on the bottom and another set of frequencies on top. But in this case, those are really the same MIDI notes. In EaganMatrix programming, I can put some kind of scaler or offset on the bottom Y notes and scale the top ones so that the top of Y frequencies can come out different than the bottom. But this isn't doing really what this person wants. This is just kind of rescaling the same pitches. Well, another thing you could do is I can use the pitch table editor or a custom retuning interface like I created for the Electra 1. I also have the information on how to program your own tuning interface to support EaganMatrix tuning grids in the Overlay Developer's Guide. I can create a set of 17 pitches, and in those 17 pitches, I can iterate that, and each of those 17 pitches can support whatever the micro tuning I need from my 17 tone scale. Of course, this isn't really what is wanted either. Here you'll have to figure out how to ignore the surface and play where your pitches are for each of the 17 notes per octave. Another thing I can do is I can rescale the continuum so that there are 17 discrete pitches in an octave. I'll have to quantize this because if you're playing the normal surface, it'll be almost impossible for you to center on one of the 17 pitches with any regularity. But I can do that and quantize it. But now you're going to have to figure out how to play on this linear surface. And again, this is not what's wanted. Well, on one continuum, there's another possibility, and that's I can use the pitch table editor or another tuning program to split the octave into 2 notes per note, a 24-note scale per octave instead of 12. And then maybe what I can do is set the white notes, or the red ones in this case, on the continuum, both to the same frequency, and the black note, which I've now split into 2 parts because I'm 24 notes per octave, I can set each one of those parts to a different frequency that I want to support my 17-note scale. Well, that'll work, but that's not exactly what's desired either. Here, you'll have to figure out how to play and very finely play one half of the black key for one of the enharmonic pitches and the other half for the other. That's not really what was desired. So what could we do here to kind of simulate what was really desired? Splitting the black y-axis into 2 parts and having a different frequency come out on each part. Well, you can do that, but you'll need two EaganMatrix instruments. So here's one possibility that we'll talk about in this video. I've taken my continuum and I've sent the MIDI out of that continuum to the MIDI in of an EaganMatrix module. I'll set these both to the same preset because I want them to sound like they're playing the same thing. And I'll scale the volumes of those presets so that it sounds like the same preset if I'm playing one of the instruments or the other. Now, because I have two instruments, I can split my keyboard programmatically with the EaganMatrix. We'll see that in a second. And I can program with the pitch table editor a 12-note scale that has one set of frequencies for the C sharp enharmonics, and I'll program the EaganMatrix module with another pitch grid that has the flatted enharmonic frequencies for the black keys. The white keys I'll keep as the same pitches in case you just happen to hit one. So how do we do this? Well, for the continuum side, what I'll do is I'll put a scaler on the output because this preset just happened not to have a scaler there. If it did have, I'd have to somehow create some kind of a combined formula to do this. But I'm using the standard violin, viola, cello, bass 2 preset here, which doesn't have a scaler on the SLSR columns. So I'll create a formula for the lower continuum side that has a constant of 1 on the W. I could gate this too, but that might create a little bit of a sharp attack you don't want, but you certainly could gate it. I'm just using a constant here. And that's multiplied by Y. Y is set here, so you can see the bottom half of it is set to a 1, but when I get to the top half, I set that to a 0 with this basically two-step function. So when I'm playing now, the continuum is not going to make any sound on the top half of Y. And it will play whatever tuning it has loaded on the bottom half of Y. Obviously, what I'll do now for the EaganMatrix module side is I'll do the opposite. I'll load that with the same preset, scale that volume Y so it sounds the same if I'm playing that versus the continuum version. And now I'll scale, same thing, a constant of W scaled with Y that has 0 on the bottom of Y, so nothing will come out on the bottom of Y, and unity at the top. So the EaganMatrix module will only play top of Y for whatever scale you have loaded on that. And we'll load that different microtuning on each, so the top black part plays the one tuning, and the bottom black part plays the other tuning on the other instrument. Okay, so that's the basics of how to do this. Now, how do I actually load up this stuff? Well, let's take a look here. I'll go in, I'll find some scale, 17-note scale, that is representative of what I want to do. And there are a lot of different kinds of scales you can do now. You can pretty much load up anything you like. Here, I found the 17 out of 31 scale that has split C sharp and D flat, D sharp, E flat, F sharp, G flat, etc. So the black notes are all split with different frequencies on this, and the white notes are one frequency. So what I'll do with that 17-note scale, because I want to play normal 12-note scales, I'll split that into two parts. I'll create two scale files, one that only has the sharp enharmonic notes in it. That'll be played on the continuum, and the other one on the EaganMatrix module will be the same thing, only that will use the flatted enharmonic frequencies. And then when I load these both up with the pitch table editor, given the hardware configuration that we're using, I should be able to simulate what was originally intended. Okay, I have the pitch table editor, the PTE up, and we'll load each of the scale files that we created to allow us to split the black continuum pad into the two frequencies that we desire. We'll go to Edit, Import, go to your scale file. Here's the one I have for the continuum, the low part of Y. I'll open that. You'll see the scaling that is associated with that file. Now I will offset that so it starts at the very beginning of the MIDI range, and then I'll just paste it in, and that creates my new scale that I want to load in. I'll go in now and go to Table. I'll select the Continuum. That's where I want to load it. And I want to load this at grid 80. There are 8 possible tuning grids that you can load into. We'll load into 80 for each of our instruments. I'll send that to the Continuum, and it takes a little bit of time to load. I will bypass this in the video. Okay, that's loaded into the Continuum. Now I'll go to New and I'll start over again. I'll go to Edit. I'll import the other scalar file, the one that I want to send to the EaganMatrix module. I'll open that. I see the scaling there, a little different. Now I will set that one to my 0 offsets. You could offset this to some other part of the keyboard. You might only want half of your keyboard doing this, and maybe the other half's just doing equal temperament. You can do that. So I will paste that in, and I'll now go to Table, and I'll select my EaganMatrix module and load that up. Okay, both of my instruments are loaded. Now I want to go back into the editor and make sure that the appropriate tuning grid is selected for use for the preset that we're playing. Back in the editor for the Continuum, we'll go and look at the grid settings. Here it defaults to its equal temperament. We're going to want to change that to use what we loaded, custom grid 80. Now, if you want to try and emulate a keyboard, you're probably going to want to set rounding so that it's quantized, so that you don't have to worry about bend affecting your frequencies. Of course, you could apply bend if you wanted to. And if we apply full rounding, quantization, we really don't care about initial rounding. Now, this is set. We might want to go in and save it to our preset slot with the right grid. So anytime we come in and select that now, we'll be back to the right preset with the right grid setting. Do the same thing on your EaganMatrix module, and you should now be set up to play with one tuning on the bottom black notes and the other tuning on the top.